So, normal agenda here with, like I was saying, the planned focus of the meeting, the longer conversation being on the shared energy manager coordination with the initial draft they put out on the solar PV rooftop panels for the township and the GPCC building, the feasibility study they did. And then we can go through the walking, biking paths, and the open space discussion. First start, I don't know, we have officially 2 guests. I don't know, any comments from the public at the meeting?
Hi. It's a great comment.
This is my son, Drew. I don't remember if, he's been to the meeting. He was to the meeting last November, I guess it was.
Yeah.
Or the,
Yeah.
was it? I
Yeah.
forget if everybody was there.
Community engagement one.
Yeah. Bill, any?
I'm good.
You're good.
Are these the same energy managers that we met at the last meeting?
Sorry, yeah, we've got Patrick and Kyle on.
Yep, so you met me at the board meeting, and Kyle has been working here in our office, but wasn't there in person for that meeting.
Great.
Thank you. I think you guys all saw the emails, right? So received the draft feasibility assessment back on the 5th. We were able to collect some comments. I think there were like 3 of us who commented, and got this back to you. I think it was on the 13th. And so just a little bit of initial feedback that we got. Happy to work with Ron in the analysis tool that they have for financial outlook planning, and then trying to, I guess, maybe delay some of the more detailed studies that we were talking about, maybe to a later step once the township was more interested in, showing more interest in moving forward. So I didn't really have a planned way to go through this. I don't know if you want me to bring up the document, bring up the comments. What do you think, Patrick?
I think happy to work either way. We can definitely just go through the comments, or if you want to open it up for discussion, if you feel like folks have things that were outside of that initial comment list. But yeah, I think the one thing I wanted to maybe highlight is on that last bullet point, just related to the pro forma analyses. I think exactly what you said is maybe one step further that is maybe better to take once you've got a little bit of buy-in from the township and sort of a little more direction on how they view the project being realized. Because I think you might end up doing, a dozen or more permutations of what this project might look like. And I think it might cloud sort of the high-level decision-making of can we move forward with solar, and what building or buildings is that focused on.
Mm-hmm. I mean, keeping it high level, so I just had a hard time understanding. I know we don't want to do 50 different scenarios and boggle everybody's minds with so many numbers and everything. But so far, what we've got in what you guys put in the feasibility study was basically just the one simple payback period, and being many decisions driven by financial concerns. That seems like a very simple metric being used currently. Doesn't really give them much feel. So what do you see, I guess, as the next step, or how can we get to that next step where we're really starting to narrow down what the financial outlook might look like, because I don't see any big commitment coming out of them until they have a pretty firm understanding of the financial aspects.
There was no cost information, right?
There was.
There was?
I mean, it was basic, but yes, there was some basic cost.
What the cost of the whole project was?
Yeah, there's the basics on the costs, the upfront incentives, ongoing incentives, ongoing maintenance costs, ongoing savings, and what the value of those are. So, yeah, there's a place for pro forma analyses. I guess I would look maybe to you to tell us what the township usually makes their decisions based on. But my takeaway from the meeting in the beginning of May is that they were looking for somewhat of a what's the right way to say it? That they're looking for a technical and basic economic feasibility analysis so that they know if it's something that they want to move forward with understanding further. I think modeling a lot of scenarios with, different financing options and different, potential project structures throughout the 20 or 25 year project life, I think that's going to cloud the message. I guess generally what we see folks being able to use at a first step is that simple payback.
Could I ask a question? So I think, Patrick, what I've discovered is that the township doesn't have any funds to put into this project. So I think the only way they could do it is if we do a PPA or a PSA analysis. Do you guys have a model that you could pull up with those results?
So I guess I would say there's not much point in modeling a PPA or PSA. It comes down to essentially what a proposer would actually give you in terms of what the rate would be, in terms of what the buyout clauses would be. We could make some guesses, but they would be just that.
So we don't
So
have.
I hesitate to really go too far into analyzing that. My recommendation would be if you want to understand the PPA or PSA options, and you think that that's the likely path forward, I would recommend putting out a procurement to solicit proposals from interested parties and get real firm numbers.
So that's a good point. That's what Springfield is doing. They're asking in their RFP for both direct ownership cost and a PPA cost. So
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm able to hear the room.
where's the microphone? Sorry. So the Springfield Township RFP, I noticed that they're asking their bidders to return both direct ownership cost and a PPA cost. I think,
Right.
From what it looked like in the email that Andy received from Matt, our manager, Matt West, is that he would rather us look for an alternative to installing solar. So he said, what if you bought electricity, renewable electricity, as an alternative? So I think they would prefer that option. So I'm thinking that if we could show that the PPA or the PSA would give them an equal relative cost of electricity. So, their current contract is 6.43 cents a kilowatt hour, and if they renew November 2026, it's likely to be in the sevens or higher. Commercial Pico right now is 9 point something. So they're likely to face a budget impact on their electricity cost at that moment. So I don't think Matt was willing to do an RFP if council, or if we couldn't convince council that it was worth putting it out for RFP. So if we don't know that the PSA or the PPA would give them a better cost of electricity, then, so we're kind of a chicken and egg. If we don't know what the PPA or the PSA can return in cost of electricity, we can't tell the township to go forward with the RFP because they don't want to risk putting out RFP and having to take a bid that they don't feel comfortable, investing in.
So the PPA is we still build the solar system?
Yeah, the developer owns it for a
They
period
own
of
it.
years, and usually in the PPA model, they'll give the township an opportunity to buy back it, after so many years, 6, 10, 15, 20, whatever you decide. But in the long run, the developer would rather the township own the panels, so that's why they want to offer them that option to buy back, because they don't want to have full responsibility for the life of the panels. The developer just, would rather have the township take ownership. So we're in a chicken and egg thing, is that unless you can make an argument to the council that they should go forward with the RFP, aren't we obligated to take at least a bidder out of it? Why do we put all these developers to this much work if they don't have a chance of winning the contract? So is it you're putting something out there, but then you're not promising them that they'll get the contract? How do you ethically do that?
Well, you would ethically just state it. They put out proposals and they come to nothing all the time. To be clear, I definitely see the point. I agree that you shouldn't put it out as we're going to award this to somebody if that's not your intention. But it is common to sometimes to put out a request for proposals or request for procurement with no guarantee that there's an award at the end.
Okay, so like an RFI, request for information, and so we're asking all the service providers to simply give them their estimates on the PPA and the PSA, and then we can show that to the township saying, look, you're locking in your electricity cost, and this is going to avoid your budget impact in November 2026.
Do you get an accurate assessment with that, though, if people know they're not going to get a contract? They're like, how sharp is the pencil and the time that they
I would
spend?
hope that these solar developers would do their best to give the township a realistic number, and if they don't think they can provide electricity at a cost that would be reasonable to the township, then it's fair that we ignore them, that we won't give them the business. So the RFI would then lead to a contract award. I don't know, do you have to put it back out for RFP once you've got the RFI done? Do you have to kind of let all the bidders have another chance to go at it? Do you know, Patrick?
I don't know for sure whether you could write it to allow you to continue down the process. That'd be a solicitor question, probably.
There would be an award if it was attractive, right?
Well, that's so the council would get back all these numbers from the RFI,
Yeah.
and then they would say, yes, we'll go forward or we won't go forward. But I guess I don't know, ethically, do you have to go back out and now say, now we're putting it out for actual bid that we want a firm number and a commitment to do the development, because the RFI, they might just throw the numbers together and say, well, I'll refine it when they ask me for the RFP.
Right. That's what I was trying to say.
Would also raise for consideration, I don't know, again, this is maybe a solicitor question, but you could also solicit a few informal proposals for the purpose of understanding the market, just directly from a few developers. With the understanding, you could tell them, this is not a procurement. If we decide we want to go forward, we will do a procurement. But would you be interested in giving us a soft proposal?
Yeah, maybe we could learn from Springfield's results. I think they're expecting their answers back by July 11th. So since they're asking their bidders, to put both PSA and a PPA and a direct ownership cost together, is Springfield allowed to share those numbers with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's a public bid open, I think, so I can check with Mike, but I'm sure he'd be happy to share the results probably.
That actually, I think, feeds into the question I was going to ask. If in this paper, you've got the cost estimates there. Is there any comparison, or any local PPAs that we know of right now that we can put in there just as an examples? I know it's not going to be our situation, but just here's an average PPA at this point? Or no? Doesn't make sense.
I guess I don't have a good one in recent, like in the last couple of years in this size range. So I would hesitate to use any of the numbers that we have historically.
Now, if we did put,
But if you have something, we could, happy to talk to somebody who's got some numbers that are pretty fresh.
and actually, if we do put it out for a soft proposal, Andy, we did talk to the solar developer for our ESCO, and they did put together a PSA or a PPA for us back in 2019. So, we do have a workbook that shows us that, but we didn't feel comfortable sharing that because it's proprietary. And so I think if we did want to engage them, they would want to bid on Plymouth's solar because they've been with the township for, at least the ESCO that has this relationship with the solar developer has been with the township forever. That's why, the township likes this ESCO because they got the 6.43, and before that, their contract was 4.5, I think. So they've got the best electricity. In fact, Ron Celentano of Springfield couldn't believe that we were getting below, market rate on electricity. So he said the reason why our direct ownership pro forma wasn't penciling out is because when you've got that low electricity, when you put in all the labor and the installation and all that, it ends up that your average electricity rate for the 30 years isn't much better. So, but that's why they get a better payback because they're using PECO as their default supplier.
So the results of the proposal is just that we can do this for X cents per kilowatt hour.
That would be the goal because you figure
So
the
they'll
total
just give you a number. And
Well,
if that number's
the
lower
whole-
than PECO, then
the whole quote would be the installation cost of labor, the overhead, maintenance, whatever. But you're right. Once you get the bid back, then you average that out based on the projected usage of the electricity. So we now know the kilowatt hours that were used in a year, 12 months. So if we project that out for 30 years, there's going to be changes, of course, as the township's usage changes. But you kind of model that out and say, well, if electricity inflates at a certain percentage, then your workbook can then show you what the average electricity rate would be for the 30 years.
What's the life of a panel?
Usually 25 to 30. It starts to degrade after 25, so you won't get 100%, but there's usually something built into the pro forma to take a degradation percent off the panels as it ages.
And does it, help me out, Bill, does it matter on the type of panel? Are some panels better and more expensive than
That's
other panels?
another thing we'd have to
Yeah.
work with a developer to kind of help us
Yeah.
understand that.
I'd say the panels some are better than others. Around 0.5% degradation per year is generally what you'll see. The way that we usually cover it is in an RFP for a solar project. We would write in what the allowable degradation is, and they would have to provide a panel to meet that.
Yep. So do you think you guys could make an argument to council to go ahead with a soft a request for information just to gather PSA our PPA and PSA numbers for this project? Could you help us make that pitch?
I think we're happy to support. Yeah. I guess I would be looking for you guys to probably make the argument, but we're happy to talk about the foundations for it or how we can assist, and things like that. Certainly.
Right now, I guess I'm seeing two immediate questions to Matt. One is preferred PPA or bundled energy, renewable energy, over an outright ownership model, if that's really the way he thinks that the township would prefer to go, or if he's still open to the ideas. I know you got it in the paper, I'm just trying to understand which way they're leaning. Like Bill said, they seem to indicate the latter,
Yeah, I guess,
whatever,
maybe
non-ownership.
Yeah, well, that's what Matt had said. I think when we had talked to him before, is that he would want to try to include it in a capital plan for direct purchase. So that's sort of what we were operating under. I think it is the right question, though, of sort of what is the realistic path forward.
Yeah, I think probably that was his attitude 2 months ago, but I've learned that the township is putting a lot of capital for a firehouse expansion, and they did have $10 million surplus at last year's budget.
Scroll down to the
But
PPA
he
paragraph.
said that council is very leery of doing anything capital this cycle. And I asked him, I said, well, could you include it in 2026 budget? And he said that he doesn't have enough information to kind of think about whether it's feasible for them to even do that initial direct investment. So I think they're going to feel more comfortable with the PPA or PSA if it pencils out that they can still control their energy budget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
And my second question, not really for Matt, but to go to the solicitor and ask basically what the allowable options are for reaching out for the RFP, RFI, or just direct reach out to get a soft estimate. So those are two things I wrote down. You can write Matt about tonight, tomorrow.
And I guess, making the argument to them that it would probably be worth getting the numbers for some example PPA, PSAs, just to see whether it would be an intermediate step for the township to get comfortable with solar, not having to have expended any capital, and then say, hey, we don't have to buy into it until after 5 years. So this will give you a cushion. You'll get to the 2026 rate renewal, and then you can see what the inflation has been, and then you can decide when you want to buy the panels back. And if you see that electricity is increasing, it may be worth you buying the panels back earlier than later. So the PSA or PPA could have, buybacks at, whatever we decide, 5, 10, 15, and then the township could decide, is it time for us to, is it worth it because now we see electricity, what's actually happening to the rates?
One thing that I would add to that is that it's sort of interesting when you enter the PPA, both the cost of electricity off of the system, not from the grid, of course, but for the system itself, and the buyouts every year are basically predetermined. They're all written into the contract. So from the outset what your comparison points are of, do I continue paying for the electricity off of this system for the next 20 years, or do I buy it out in year 5, do I buy it out in year 10? So it still gives you the option of choosing whether you buy it out or not, but the calculations actually don't change really over the course of the system life.
Although, what's the advantage to the township for having bought it out? What are they saving themselves if they buy it out earlier than later? Why would they choose a sooner date than a later date? What's the advantage?
There's a profit component every year for the developer in the PPA rate. And so generally speaking, it's up to the discretion of the developer and how they structure the buyout schedule, but generally you're paying a premium every year you stay under the PPA. And when you buy out the system, you stop paying that premium.
So that would be then the kind of discount to the township's electricity budget is that they could say, well, now we know for the remainder of the life of the panels, we're going to save this much on our electricity because we don't have to pay that profit cut to the developer.
Yeah, that's right. And that would tell, you can calculate that from the outset, which is the cool thing. And you will find when you kind of look at different proposals and look at the different cash flow, it's not necessarily a given that you're going to save money on a year-over-year basis with a PPA. Generally speaking, depending on the SREC value, you may cash flow positive, you may cash flow negative. But for the most part, once after the buyout, unless the buyout schedule is crazy, which I have seen that too, as long as the buyout schedule is reasonable, after that point, you generally are seeing the savings you expect to see.
So do you think we can make this pitch to council, Andy, or do we need some backup?
Well, I mean, first, I guess I need to get the information from Matt on what he thinks are realistic options, and then we can take what he thinks are realistic options and try to convince council to move forward with something, right? I guess that's just my thoughts. I don't know what else we need. I mean, if the question is go out for RFP, R5, and he just needs council's approval, I don't think there's really any more information that we need in the feasibility.
So, yeah, that's true, but
And in the interest of time, if you can determine from the solicitor that it's acceptable to just get a few soft proposals, that'll be your quickest way to having some numbers that you can put in front of council, probably.
Okay.
and I guess.
Now, if that's not an option, then that's not an option.
And I guess I'm a little nervous that Matt may not be as confident in this, and so he may not advocate for it as much as we would. So that's why I'm almost wondering whether having an opportunity to have a discussion with council or Matt, maybe privately, just to help educate on everything you shared with us tonight, because you know, if we just have an email that says, hey, we'd like to see PPA and PSA costs for this, I don't know that he'll understand how we got there.
I don't think that's the email. I mean, we're trying to figure out paths forward. And so I don't know if he'll be reluctant to talk about different paths forward. I mean, if you're actually pulling a trigger and saying this, then I think we do need to get in front of council and convince them and have them push, direct the township, right?
So I guess then the question is, who writes the RFI? Is this something that we could ask the shared energy manager team to do, to write the RFI or the RFP? Because then it's going to come back to, do they have staff time to do this, and are they willing to put that investment into it, because they may not feel confident that they should go forward. They've already got this constrained use of their capital, and they're saying, hey, we got so much on our plate right now, we don't want to even entertain this.
So your question
Yeah, I
is,
would,
can
so I-
Patrick and team help?
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Andrew.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're definitely able to help with drafting an RFP or RFI. That's basically the role that we've played so far with Springfield. But I will say it does still require some input and assistance from the township as far as, running it past the solicitor, getting, Matt and Rick probably to give their input on the finer points of what the document actually says in the end. We can do most of the heavy lifting. But I would not say that it would, what we'll put together won't be like, we won't have the legal language to be procurement ready specifically. It shouldn't need much edits, but it'll be a collaborative effort, if you will.
Yeah, so one thing that Rick Carbo stressed at our last DAB meeting was that he said, hey, we do not have the flexibility that Springfield might to have put out our own RFP because we have a responsible contractor ordinance. Have you ever run across that with any of your other municipalities?
I haven't, I guess. What's included in that ordinance?
Well, I think it's got, I should have pulled out the link to it in our code for you. It wasn't real clear to me, but it sounded like the way Rick described it at the last meeting was something about they have to have some sort of wage criteria, fair wage or whatever they call it, for contractors based on some measurement or some criteria. So anyway, so it's just another little wrinkle, and whether that would impact the RFI because we'd have to say, the PPA, PSA needs responsible, contract inclusion or whatever. Whether that increases their cost or not, I don't know. The developer's
Yeah,
cost.
well, and that's a good point. And that would be the type of thing where we would need input from, township folks who are familiar with the procurement requirements. One thing, not to throw a wrench in all of this, but of course, everyone's, I think, aware of the changing nature of the federal investment tax credit. So I think just to throw some timelines out there, I think it's within 60 days of the bill passing. If it passes in its current form, a project has to begin construction to be eligible for taking the whatever form the investment tax credit may remain in. So I think it is worth kind of thinking in terms of what is the quickest way to get from here today to buy in enough from the township to actually be able to move forward with anything. So if you were to go like the RFI or even RFP route, but not be certain if you're going to award something, my only concern with that would be, I think that puts you like 3 months down the line from today before you have the numbers that you would then talk about to be able to put out a real procurement later in the year.
So would you suggest combining it, make the RFI offer an option that we could then pick a bidder based on just that and go forward with them?
I think if you have that option available to you, that's maybe a nice way to go forward. I like also the possibility, if it could work for you, to do gathering soft proposals. My guess is you can have those numbers in 2-3 weeks. So yeah, maybe I guess I would say one of those would be preferable to this sequential timeline where we have an initial step that takes a couple months. And then if we are ready to go forward, the next step takes a further however many months.
And I just think with their their facilitation and their understanding of this. Probably be just as well for them to have the conversation with Matt, just have a call with him and, because if we start to facilitate this and we put anything across that might not be right, I think it's just clearer for them to talk directly to Matt and just, get him to this level of understanding.
I think we're definitely happy to participate in those conversations. If you want to, set something like that up, we can participate.
Okay.
Why would you even bother with the soft proposal? Why would you do that?
Well, I mean, rather than the RFI, which would take months, I think.
Why
Some
would-
proposal, getting some quick estimates from places.
I mean, I guess, can you just find out if the township's willing to do a PPA? And if they are, then you issue a RFP, right? Or,
Well, without the firmer numbers, they're not able to do that because they don't really know if it's a benefit or if it will work well, right?
And also your
that's
your
what the
contractor,
proposal tells you, though.
your
The question, though, was if RFP, are we obligated to move forward?
then you're obligated to offer to the bid winning contractor, whereas a soft proposal, you're just saying, I want
In the
information.
proposal that it has to be at least,
Question
at
for
most
the
this
solicitor,
level or
That's one
something.
of the things we would have to follow up. What are those options that we're allowed to?
But would a soft proposal from a contractor include a lot of that, let's say, wiggle room? Because they're really not, like, it's not a hard number.
Yeah.
So this cost could be X, or it could be X times 2, or, because they're really not
Maybe
like,
a range, not real numbers.
exactly, they're really not like honing in on something at that time.
In which case it'll just be, then you have to go back and do the whole thing over.
Well, you just have to watch yourself. If if you award it, on that, you would have to say, well, we take exception to that part of the contract. We'd like the cost to be X, or, or whatever, or a lid on that. Let's not get into the contract details. I'm just afraid that a soft proposal could be a little more like squishy, to use a technical term.
Yeah, what's your feeling? What's your feeling with that, Patrick? I mean, could the RFI be written saying, hey, at this point, we aren't ready to offer the contract, but if the numbers come in, if you can give us as accurate a number as possible, there might be an option that the council would award a bid as a result. I don't know. Is that even workable?
And when you have to
I
ask,
think it's possible. I guess I think these solar developers are on a daily basis. The ones who are offering PPAs or PSAs, they're very used to giving proposals, firm proposals, soft proposals. They may add a little bit of wiggle room in a soft proposal, particularly now with the uncertainty of the tax credits. Or they may just say, here's a number, it's valid for 2 weeks, and that's all I can hold it. I would anticipate that being more of the route that they would go. I think the numbers they would give you would be pretty good, and you would know if there's a massive change on the federal scale that you're going to have to get new numbers.
Yeah, that sounds right. They usually, like any vendors, they will give with certain time period, like this proposal, or these numbers are valid just for 1 month period or something like that, right? Yeah, there will be some sort of expiry date.
You're right. They can't hold it out there forever.
Yeah.
We've been talking here for
Batting this around.
45 minutes, so I'm hearing again some questions to Matt, and then really setting up a meeting, having shared energy managers sit down and maybe walk him through some of the options a little better than an email. So we'll move forward with that and trying to get some more information from the solicitor on best options.
I think that sounds like a good path. I was wanting to check one last thing before we break off this topic. Did you want us to collaborate with Ron Celentano on the any parts of the analysis, or I wasn't sure if you just sent it to him to get his thoughts and that was kind of the extent of it, or if you were thinking of a more active collaboration, or what your thoughts were there.
I guess I'd asked him not to share it because I knew that we had not put it in front of our council. So if he already shared it with you, I guess we just hope that you guys will all keep it private. So yeah, I thought that it was helpful to he and as EAC chair, Joy, or I don't know if she's chair anymore, but Joy Berge, because they were she was the promoter of solar in the EAC to get to this point of putting it out. So yeah, I'm glad to have Ron know about it. He's confidential enough that he won't, break any trust. But I just kind of let him know that we were in the path and to see,
I mean, that was all the workbooks that we attached.
Well, I shared the workbooks, but I also shared this draft memo from our SEM.
Okay. But to the SEM, we sent those workbooks that you.
Yeah, the same workbooks that Ron has on the Solar for School kit. But I just wanted to be open that Ron has seen the draft memo for Plymouth.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. And if you end up bringing Ron further in the fold or anything like that, we're happy to collaborate. Just will kind of take your lead or take your direction on that.
Yeah, I think maybe I can reach out to Joy and Ron on my own and just say, hey guys, when you get the results back June 11th, are you able to share those numbers? Do you care if the SEM shares those numbers with our Plymouth team, just so that we can better refine our decision for going out for RFI or not? Maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah, that's a good question. I can ask. I think Mike Taylor's probably the guy to ask that of.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks.
I guess
No problem.
I would make one comment is in my previous company, we'd supplied equipment to power plants like gas turbines, and we would routinely, like every day, get requests for, can you give us a quote for supplying this, and just give us a quote by like Friday. And that's the kind of time frame that they worked on. These were generally quoting to utilities or maybe a bigger contractor. So it was routine to ask people, and these were like $500,000, $1 million pieces of equipment. Or
And I think, as you mentioned, that
not really a big deal.
yeah, these solar developers that are doing these PSAs and PPAs probably have it down to a plug and play workbook. So I don't think it would cost them much to put it together for us. So I think it's a fair ask to get the information.
And put a short time frame on it too.
All right. Patrick, thank you for joining us this evening. If we're good, I'll drop the Zoom call.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a good night. No, Rick will show. Frank, what's your whole thing? I fit the whole thing on the
We haven't been able to get a hold of the Director of Public Works or maybe somebody in his, taking his place. But I do think for this, as I'm thinking about more, we need like a sponsor, like somebody, an advocate, like somebody who wants to get it done. We're not going to get it done, just, us. So whether it be Matt or someone in a position of power that doesn't do the work, but says, I want it done, you guys give me the input, and I'll kind of push it through if it seems reasonable.
Do you think the people that are being, the upcoming election for the council would be good to like approach someone who's running and say like, would you be willing to add this onto your platform and push for this, and maybe it'll help? Is that a good way, or should we approach someone like Matt or someone on council already?
I
I
don't
think
know.
is our liaison. I mean, that's who initially pops
Yeah.
to mind.
Yeah, but he's stepping down from his position. When do they elect again? It's coming up, right?
November?
Well, the official in November, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know
So
what his cycle is though.
yeah, I think he's finished this. I think he's finished. He's not going to try and go again. And there was one person who is running to take his spot, and he was the only candidate. So I know traffic was an issue that this candidate is focusing on, because he lives on Belvoir Road, where there's at this weird intersection where there's line of sight issues and speeding issues, and so maybe he would be, as an extension of that, be willing to advocate for bike lanes in some spots or something.
So I was at that traffic calming meeting. Ellen was there also. And a little disappointed in it, just because everything pointed to PennDOT. We really can't do anything here. PennDOT controls every road but like my street, which is a cul-de-sac or something. And there are a lot of very angry people there. Very angry people with traffic. However, you were allowed to ask questions, so I kind of planted a question that said, what about bike lanes? What do they do for traffic? Questions were asked anonymously, and Matt actually answered it, along with the traffic engineer, who's a consultant, saying bike lanes actually are a means of traffic calming. Because you have the signs, you have the street, and people tend to maybe take their time a little bit more, be a little more attentive. That was the extent of the answer, so I thought, well, that kind of blends into it. But I think we still need somebody, like to push that forward to be our advocate. And I still think, and I got some feedback, I like the idea perhaps of just doing like Jolly Road as like a pilot program. It is pretty accessible for that. So we need somebody from the township to either look at cost or feasibility, or, do you have to ask the neighbors about any of this, or, stuff like that, just to make sure we're doing the right stuff. The other thing I get a little confused about, and maybe Bill or that guy Bob Thompson or somebody could help me out. I do a lot of driving around. I drive up near Limerick, up Ridge Pike. Speed limit is 45 miles an hour, and they got bike lane signs on the side of the road with the road's like this wide. And if you go on the new 202 extension, they do have the bike path off the road, but then there are parts on 202 again where people are going 50 miles an hour. So I'm thinking, so do you just paint these things everywhere and call it a bike lane and get a tax credit or something? I don't know. They just seem like so random. And I've never really noticed them before, except, getting involved in this activity. You're like, wow, look at that.
It's the same
I don't
thing.
know if I'd ride my bike there.
Yeah, it's the same thing on Henry Avenue going, into the city. It's like they have bike lanes, but you never see anyone riding them because it's very dangerous.
About 2 months ago, the city of Philadelphia Council approved 3 new bike lanes in Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia Biking Council was totally against it. So I don't know whether you get credit for this or tax credits or anything like that. So there's an incentive for a municipality or city to do it. But again, as I drive around, I just get a little confused. Now, Bob may have some pretty good insight on this because he's probably been through that a number of times.
Was there a reason stated why the bicycle council didn't like?
I just heard the
One in
top.
Philly, yeah.
I just heard the top story of the news because they're. Well, being familiar with the ones on Chestnut Street, Walnut Street, the bike lanes here, and then it becomes in the middle of the street when there's a SEPTA bus turning lane. It just gets, and there have been some significant biking accidents in Philadelphia.
I know a big thing is they're trying to advocate for protected biking lanes instead of just this painted lane, or moving the parking from the curb to here and then having the bike on the protected from the parked cars. And maybe that's why they were pushing back because it wasn't as good as they wanted.
The other thought I had, and it's in there somewhere, like, so let's say we do that, and we put it on Jolly Road and somebody has an accident. Is the township liable, or is anybody liable for that, or with proper signage and proper legal whatever? But I balance that with seeing these bike lane symbols, like just like anywhere, like you're saying, they're just anywhere. So anyway, in the short term, I think we really need a sponsor. Matt might be the right guy to say, hey, I want to get this done, and then we can get, and I'll be glad to do it with the Director of Public Works or his designee, some cost, some real, like, a little bit more definitive of where we want to go with this thing, and see if we want to do it on Jolly Road. You do it on Jolly Road, see if it works out, and then we, by that time, maybe a Bob Thompson would be on board, and we can see where we want to go with that.
We could also, I've got a contact in Whitpain, and she's the one that told me about the shared bike or the path going up, is that Meeting House Road that goes up by the old Unisys?
Either Wentz Road or Meeting House, one of them.
Yeah, Meeting House, I think that goes up into Whitpain. And she seemed to have a lot of background on how they got to the point they are. Maybe I can invite her to our next meeting and just, run some of those questions you just asked. Say, what is liability? How did you come about this? How did you make it happen? And see what steps they took.
That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great.
What do you envision for the Jolly Road path? Just a line next to the street? On the side of the
I
street?
don't know if you have,
I think you had your picture.
Oh, yeah, you
I
did
had some
have
pictures from before, but yeah, there's a line there now, but a better line of maybe exactly where the line up to be. I think you've got to have a symbol in the street, and then right where you have the symbol, you have like a sign, share the road. That's about it. Now, when you get near Jolly Road, near the community center, it narrows a little bit, but still. So then I wonder, and you see in these other places, then they take this share the road sign and they put it like in the middle of the road, like right in the, right where the
I mean,
people.
the paint?
Oh yeah, like the symbol with the biker.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like in where the car goes. And that
Then we
would,
just educate our public in the newsletter and say, hey, guys, when you see this, slow down. Got to give bikes there's a certain restriction on how many feet you got to be away from a bike when you pass it. I think that's a Pennsylvania
yeah.
law.
I mean, Jolly Road, I know people speed, but that's not a real speed road, even when people go a little faster. And I know the police kind of look at that. So again, I just think that'd be a good, test balloon for that. But if we had someone like you're suggesting, Bill, who's kind of been through that a little bit,
I'll ask her.
And then I don't know how we get like our sponsor or like our advocate. Is that like Andrew just asking Matt, or like assigning him that job, or
Yeah, I'll sign them.
or a council person, or another Plymouth Township, somebody that can push that rock forward.
I mean, if not Nick, if he's done at the end of the year, maybe just asking him if I don't know how, in their various meetings, just announce that says, hey, the EAB is looking for a sponsor for this, and would anyone like to?
Well, on the other hand, all this good work you've done has been between us. And so maybe it's time for you to take it to council at the next workshop, or at a future workshop. If we're going to be talking energy in the July workshop, maybe we better let you do August or September.
So that's not a bad idea, and it would be introduced as, hi, I'm like the Plymouth Township official, manager, council person, and I really think bike lanes are important, and I really want to make it happen. So here's Frank to tell you what we're going to do. You know what I mean? Rather than, hey, guys, I got here's this guy that just wants to do this.
On the other hand, the way I see council is they've got so much on their plate. I don't think they're going to raise their hand and say, I'm going to be the lead for this. So the EAB, you as our representative, goes in and says, hey, council, I want to educate you on some things we've been looking at. I really think there's value in traffic calming plus whatever else you want to say are the benefits, health, fitness. And I have this proposal to put a bike lane on Jolly as a test case, as an initial test. And here's how I think that could benefit, and we'll educate people in the newsletter and all that. I don't think it's going to cost a lot. It's a single line of paint and a few signs. I think that would be a place to start and say, you know, I'm looking for a sponsor or a person to help me advocate for this when it comes to budget. Because when the budget discussions come up in November, they're gonna say, are we gonna allow this much money for paint and signage or not? You know,
Yeah,
so would that be a reasonable
that's reasonable.
approach?
One of the council members, Lynn Vicio, lives on right off of Jolly too. So
Okay.
it'd be
Is she a
pretty-
bicyclist?
Not that I know of, but I don't know. I don't know. But I think Jolly's a perfect road to start with because it's so many neighborhoods and takes you to the community center.
And as a slide, ending slide, Frank, you could have this say, I'm asking all the council members if they'd be willing to join me on a bicycle ride on Jolly, you know.
Start at the community center.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
It does link the community center to like, you know, towards Township Line and beyond. And there are some paths as you go through Bluebell that you can link on there, so. All right.
Now, I did find out, asked Rick at the last meeting, if he could ask Matt if we could apply for the $10,000 PICO grant. He said it's not budgeted. So nobody has dibs on it, nobody's applying for it, but we would have to, if the council's not willing to put 10,000 up this year, we'd have to go to the budget, or we'd have to ask, say, hey, we'd like to bid on it, or we'd like to apply for it next fall, 2026 fall, we need $10,000 match, can you put it in the budget for '26? So that'd be the way to go, and then we use that $20,000 to hire Bob Thomas and come up with the next steps in the plan.
So we probably would need, I mean, a typical question council would ask, say, okay, sounds great, how much is it gonna cost? Just Jolly Road. So we need, maybe even Rick could just, I don't know,
I
somebody.
think Public Works, I think, yeah, Rick or Chris could probably cost that out. Because, you know, when we talked to Chris a few years ago, he came in because we wanted to know about the paving plan. You know, when does he repave roads? And, you know, if he was repaving a road, would he be willing to put a bike path on the side? And so at the time he said, you know, I've got a restricted budget. There's not room on a lot of these roads to put that extra width of a path. But I think he would be open to it. It was just at that time he was talking about how constrained he was. So once you get this presentation in front of council, then I think you could tweak them and say, hey, can I, you know, work with Chris or, you know, get this estimated cost and all that. And maybe there is some internet accessible search. You could say, how much does a bike path paint line cost for this length of blocks? And just say, I've got these ballparks, it's ranged as between this and this.
I might have a contact. Let me check.
Okay.
I mean, number of years back, one of my colleagues, her husband, was into, I don't know if that's for-profit organization or non-profit, but he actually worked with that organization that does these bike paths and adequate for that. And so let me check with them.
Yeah, neat.
Yeah, probably he should be able to give us all the information that we need.
All right.
So where are we headed? What's the next step? Talk to Matt, just to at least get the ball rolling, or?
I think you could put a presentation together and ask for workshop time in August and say, I'd like to go to the first Monday and, you know, present this to council.
All right,
That'd be good.
let me mull that over, but, and any input, you know, some of you guys have from contacts, email me and see what we can put together.
Yeah, I think you got a great suggestion here.
I mean, I can still reach out. I can reach out to Nick and just see what he thinks of the idea of the sponsor and how that would work with a council member from his experience. Maybe
Because
can help how you present it or something
Yeah,
like that.
he's here till November at least, right? He's not running again, but he's here till,
Yeah, then he'd be
Yeah.
through the end of the
Yeah,
year, right?
okay.
But he hasn't been here in a couple months. I don't even know.
Yeah.
When was he last?
Short timer.
Yeah.
Space.
Oh, yes. So I asked Rick if the tree giveaway was approved, council approved the tree giveaway. And there's also a grant, potential grant we could apply for that would help with that. So it looks like I'm gonna try and order or reserve the trees because they go fast from the nursery that we get it from, because there's so many other townships that reserve from the same spot. But if anyone has any suggestions or any specific species that you know are popular, or I kind of have a sense, but I'm going to try and put a list together, and I guess I'll send it by you guys first, and if you have any comments before, I'll send it to Rick and then reserve it at the nursery before they're gone.
How many do you usually get?
We're starting off with, this year Rick said 50 trees for the fall, just to kind of test it out.
That sounds like a good number.
Yeah, we do 250 in White Marsh, which in my opinion is kind of too many. I think 50 is good to start with, and then maybe, if it's a good response, we can do another one in the spring, or just do more in the fall next year. Yeah, but I think it'll be good. I see lots of trees being cut down, but not a lot being planted. So hopefully this will help. And I also got in touch with Colleen Felicki with the Back to Earth Compost about doing a workshop for Plymouth Township residents and folks in the fall. And I got some answers about what she charges and things like that. I know we talked about it last month. So I asked her for a date, and she said Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday after work hours in the fall is fine. September or October. So I guess I wanted to come up with 2 dates to propose to her for this workshop. I don't know if anyone has specific dates, or if you want to be there for the workshop. But I guess we could just pick a couple, a day in September or a day in October and propose them so we can set it.
Do we know when the fall newsletter will be published? Because it would be interesting if it comes out early enough that we could advertise a date following, so maybe a couple weeks at least after.
Yeah, let's see if I can real quick see when last year's was published. Fall 2024 newsletter.
I would think they're gathering inputs now.
They need a draft by we need to find the deadline.
Yeah. I don't know for sure. There's no dates on here.
We'll probably email Matt and just ask him what's the deadline for the fall newsletter input, and when did you expect it to be published? We usually dealt with Karen Weiss on that.
Okay. So we're thinking hopefully after that gets published, so we can advertise.
It would be
about it?
nice just to get some additional publicity, I think.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I'll do that. She said also she usually charges $15 per person, but she's flexible. She said she could do it for free for Plymouth Township, but she prefers to charge something so that, because people, when it's free, tend to sign up and half of them don't show up.
I get that.
So I don't know if that would be, if we would be charging residents to come, which might be inhibitive, or if we pay her from township funds based on how many people show up, or a flat fee or something like that.
So she usually charges 15, you say?
15 per person.
So if you had 30 people show up, be $450. How many showed up at Whitpain? Do we know?
I don't know for sure. I don't know. I don't think it was 30. Yeah.
And the question would be, or another question for Whitpain would be, how did they advertise it? did they feel like they got it in front of enough people ahead of time?
Yeah.
What is it, like an hour or 2 hours? Or
She said the workshop goes 2 hours.
2 hours?
And I assume there's audio video capabilities at Harriet Wilder Park classroom. Has anyone been in there? I assume there is, but she said she'll need that because she has a PowerPoint and. So, all right, I'll try to get those things and get that sorted out. So, in terms of a tree ordinance or tree preservation, Ellen and I briefly met and talked about things because I know we had been discussing a tree preservation ordinance, and there are some municipalities nearby, and they're just, it seems that it's hard to enforce an ordinance that penalizes people for tree removals or makes it harder to remove a tree, because that usually requires a township arborist on staff or on contract or code enforcement, which would add more work. So I don't know, that would have to be a whole big thing to, ask council for. But so we were thinking, and there are a few municipalities that do this, is to potentially offer an incentive for people who keep trees on their property or keep big trees on their property. I don't know if this is possible, but like a small tax incentive or something like that. I don't know if that is possible with Duluth Township, but for example, like a lot of other nearby municipalities have a heritage tree ordinance where if you have a tree of a certain size, if it's over 20 inches in diameter, that qualifies as a heritage tree. And, it varies. Some municipalities say that it needs to be over 24 inches and needs to be a native tree. But if you have a heritage tree, there's code that grants those trees more protection or provides an incentive for maintaining those trees. But I don't know if anyone has had experience with that, or if you think if the council would, if that's possible to offer a tax incentive for something like this, and how that would be. I guess you'd still need someone to go out and see that the tree is there every year or something like that.
Yeah, one of the issues with trees that developed in my development, which, 40 years old, but when they do it, it looked beautiful. The guy put a tree like in front of every house, so many feet off the sidewalk. Well, after like 7 years or so, people were seeing some of the trees started to push the sidewalk up. I mean, we see that all over the place. So then, like, if you don't want people to cut the tree down, they're kind of like caught between, I got to replace my sidewalk, or, I got to cut the tree down. And if you go there today, like almost all the trees that were planted by that guy have eventually, been cut down, or the sidewalk is lifted up.
Mm-hmm.
Just a point out.
Yeah. It's just it's hard to kind of get a good ordinance. It takes a long time. I know Whitpain has been writing an improved ordinance for a couple years now, and they're still working on it. White Marsh just passed one last year or the year before, and I think they're having a tough time enforcing that, even though they have a township arborist. But it's just...
Did they offer any incentives?
No. I forget the two municipalities nearby that do have an incentive like that, and I have to look into their code. But it's just, we just want to mainly try and stop the removal of healthy, large, mature trees, that aren't hazardous, that aren't dead, that aren't hollow, like that house that I mentioned earlier. They just clear cut every tree. Like, how can we? Maybe the best way is education, but it would be nice to be able to offer an incentive.
Yeah.
White Marsh does have a heritage tree program, but all you get, you can nominate your tree to be a heritage tree. Township arborist comes out, measures it, identifies it, and then if it's actually a heritage tree, you just get a plaque that you can put up. But that's it. So I don't really know. The only other thing was Ellen put these together for Township Day. They're native seed packets of 3 different species, and she said if any of you guys want them to take home, feel free. We'll spread them on the sides of the roads. So,
What are they like? Trees or grass?
They're flowering
Bushes?
herbaceous plants, so wildflowers.
Okay.
This one gets pretty tall. This is actually grows in the wild down at the stream here. Cutleaf coneflower, and then New York ironweed and goldenrod. So they're all native
Pretty good.
meadow species that are
Work.
great for really.
Work. Too bad that they didn't come off.
I know, yeah.
And the idea is to take those and do what with them? To put them
You can
in your yard?
Put them in your yard
Okay.
or wherever. If you have a Pico right of way near your house, you can
Windness yard?
dig up some invasive plants and spread these seeds. Yeah.
There's I don't know the name of her, you may know, but at the Whitpain Fall Township Day up there at Montgomery Community College, there was a woman with a table, and she was offering the service where she'll come to a yard and help you convert it to native and whatever, you call it wilding or whatever. So I don't know if that would be an interesting educational event.
Yeah, actually, that's Paige with Journey Work. She's a
That's
local
it.
nonprofit. White Marsh has actually just this week teamed up with her to offer a program like that. So one of the people on the board offered to do it, convert a portion of their lawn to native flowers. So the first step is to kill the grass. It was a demonstration. Residents came out to this person's house, and that nonprofit was there. They showed how to kill the turf, put the cardboard down, put the wood chips, and then in the fall, that person will get, I forget however many plants, little potted plugs of the native plants, and you plant it in that space, in that design. And yeah, she's had great success with that. A lot of people, it makes it really easy to, add some wildflowers and reduce the size of your lawn. But yeah, maybe that's something we could, based on, see how well it does in White Marsh.
I forgot to ask Rick if he had any interest in that workshop in Lower Merion about the electric landscaping equipment. I don't know, did we already miss the date? Was that June 15th or, I forget what.
Yeah, I forget the date.
Really good thing.
Yeah.
About the seeds, we have scout meeting on Thursday. If you want, we can hold that there.
Yeah.
Just take it.
Sure. Yeah. Or if you want to take a bunch of packets from each.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I want to take them. I think it's kind of neat.
Yeah.
All right.
And can I take the information sheets because
Yeah, you can, or they're on.
on there? Oh, okay.
Yeah, they have all the information there.
Leon, I took a picture of the 3 just so I could show my wife like what it's going to look like when it grows.
Yeah.
Well, that you could probably look it up too.
Thanks for bringing those in. So single-use plastic, I think we only had one new entry put in. I know I went to one store, but I broke my own rule. I said keep editing things, but I looked at the old entry and there was nothing changed since that old entry, so I didn't add a new one. But anyway, one new entry. Thanks for whoever added the restaurant. So they did provide plastic utensils with the takeout order without request, but other than that, no plastic bags with that. So there's just the one old entry that was offering the plastic bags, and that was actually updated later. But consistent lack of signage.
Oh, I did notice there's a sign at Giant. They did have one on their door.
All right, finally.
I should have put that in. I'm sorry, I haven't entered it yet.
I've noticed though, it's like this as ordinance has gotten older, the last few stores I went in, nobody had plastic bags. You know,
Yeah.
Lowe's, Home Depot, Dick's will offer you a paper bag for like 10 cents or, I mean, I was a little impressed when you look at Home Depot and all those empty, you know, the empty, the empty things. It's like,
And Lowe's had some paper bags available, just kind of put in that plastic bag holder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to maybe thank the township for saying, hey, in the fall newsletter, put out an article and say, we appreciate everybody's
Cooperation,
follow-up? Yeah.
cooperation, right?
Cooperation, yeah, with the new ordinance, and thank you for this benefit to the environment, just to reinforce.
Yeah, we've cut out X amount of thousands of plastic
idea.
bags already or something like that.
Yeah.
So when you find the deadline, maybe you could share that with
That's a good idea.
the group.
Should we keep adding to this? I don't really, I guess, shop at many stores. It's more like I put the Chipotle one on, which was the restaurant that put the plastic utensil in. But,
yeah, that, I mean, should we keep it like it, you know, I've been to Home Depot 3 times. The first time I did it, and then I don't know, do it again. I just didn't do it again because it was the same.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying keep adding them, but like I just admitted to, I saw the old entry, there was no update relative to it, so I didn't add a new one.
maybe I'll just hit every store in the Metroplex and
Check 'em out. I
them.
keep meaning
Yeah.
to try to do that.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I don't remember the mall or it also.
Yeah.
I was on a call last night, and they were talking about EACs interested in plastic reduction, and this woman spoke up and she said, I love the apps that allow me to specify not to include a straw or plastic utensils. And she gave 2 examples. She said Panera has it on the register. I mean, I think she said she has it on a register, or at least Panera. She said Panera. I don't know if it's the app you have to have on your phone or whether you can actually say it to the cashier. And then one of the steakhouses, I don't know if it was Texas Roadhouse or something like that, she said has an option not to.
Interesting.
So that could be an interesting outreach to the commercial retail and just say, hey, you know, is there any way you can put this in your ordering system so that, you know, we can actually say not to include it?
Yeah. Or if you need it, you need to order it, like, you know, for no cost or for some cost, right? Like, just the way you add your, like,
Right, by default, not give it
yeah,
unless you ask,
yeah.
That's the ordinance.
which is what the ordinance asks.
Yeah.
Well, you know, people are surviving.
We're still here.
Yeah,
The world didn't end.
Did the fake Facebook debate die down, or the
Yeah,
Posh,
I haven't seen any posts about it, so I assume they adjusted to this life-changing event. Yeah.
I've never heard anyone complain in a store or anything like that either.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I would, certainly if there's a place that's not on there, please add it. And if you notice a change.
Yeah, if I would see a negative kind of situation, I would enter it. But again, to enter Home Depot again and again and again.
Yeah, I mean, be happy though to keep the good stuff around. I mean, give them credit, I don't know.
Yeah.
You're right, you're on the negative.
I mean, Target turned it on right away. I mean, it was like, I was impressed. They had paper bags right there, and they say on the, when you check out, you have to say how many paper bags did you take. So it's on an honor system, but still, you know, I thought it was a pretty good setup.
And we could plan a restaurant tour, bar tour, and perhaps we can do a restaurant tour. We can go around as we go to the different stores. So we had the one post for the White Marsh Pollinator Garden demonstration this past month. Anything else coming up in June here, July?
I was planning to post stuff about the Township Day, but didn't get to it, and then it ended up getting canceled. So. I was wondering if I mean, this does take up a good amount of space, but if we could set it somewhere at the community center front desk or something and say,
That's a great idea.
from the environmental board, and then we could post about that.
Good idea.
Native wildflower seeds. I know, like William Jean's Library and the Upper Dublin Library have a seed bank for vegetables, fruits, and native wildflowers. So we could consider starting something like that. I don't know where it would be though. Community center.
Isn't it William James Body Howard Township?
Isn't that part of-
Or is it White Marsh?
Yeah. We don't. I don't
No,
think
we
we
don't have
have.
library.
We don't have a library in our township, I don't think.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I
We
think the
usually go
community
to
center.
Bluebell one, so
Yeah.
yeah.
And that would be what, Woodpane, you think? Bluebell's
Yeah.
Woodpane?
Yeah. Norristown is close. William Jean's is close to Bluebell. Country Library. No library in Plymouth.
It'd be interesting to have one open up in the mall, the dead mall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they got the apartment buildings going in, don't they? The tower, isn't that being redeveloped as apartments?
Yeah, I saw it today when we drove past.
See, yeah, you can see right through the windows, like through the other side, you can see daylight through the top 4 floors when you look at that building, top 3 or 4 floors.
What do you think that means? What's
Oh,
going
they're redoing the apartments.
Oh, that they're tearing down.
Yeah, they're tearing. I mean, you can kind of see construction lights in them. You know how the construction has like a light and every now, yeah, you kind of see that.
That'll bring more traffic to the mall, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, did you see, wasn't there somebody that put in a roller rink? Is there?
It's in the mall, yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, it was doing pretty well. Guy he was in a space and he wanted to buy a bigger space.
Yeah, it looked kind of narrow. I was thinking he just got one of those narrow stores, but it would be nice if it was a bigger space.
Well, when I was there, I was looking for a bigger one. It's on the lower level, right outside Boscov's. And if your back is to Boscov's and you're looking at Dick's, it's on the right-hand side. Where at least it was, like a month ago or 6 weeks ago. And there were a lot of people there, like hooting and hollering and having a good time.
Wow.
That's what I saw too. It was
Oh, yeah.
pretty busy.
Yeah.
A couple months ago.
So I'll have to put a bike path around there, Frank.
On the outer.
That's phase 2. That's phase 2.
There's not,
It's probably years since I've been in there.
sometimes I'll go to Dick's to buy whatever, and
Dick's,
if I have some
go
time,
in.
I'll just take a loop, just to see
Yeah.
what the status is.
Dick's or Whole Foods, but never into the mall
Yeah,
itself.
I know what you mean.
We reminded the developer of the apartments that the 2040 plan had talks of a path around the mall. I
Good
don't-
point. Yes, we already have a bike path around the mall, Frank, in the plan. Remember
Really?
that comp
That'd be
plan?
nice.
That comp plan, I think we first looked at it when you first started.
Yeah.
I don't know if that went anywhere with council and their
Yeah.
approval.
You know what we could have done? It may be too late, but when the developer came in, we could have challenged them, say, hey, we're a 100% clean energy community, build a passive house apartments. They did in Exton. Exton's got passive house apartments, and they're solar, so there's gonna be no energy bills for the tenants.
Oh,
So that's a real plus.
What's passive mean?
I mean, it's a building standard that came from Europe, but it's these very thick walls, so the insulation is sufficient enough that the amount of energy you have to use on the indoor space is minimal. So, you build in the right windows and the right walls, and you can seal it up. So you have to have an air exchanger, because once you've got a building that tight, you run the risk of not having enough air. So there's built-in mechanicals in the air exchanger in the building. It's
That's cool.
and what I'm hearing is that the cost increment for above market rate is not that much greater. So when you show your market that you can offer your tenants the no cost energy,
Yeah.
they're more than willing to pay a little bit more for the apartment rent.
Yeah. Interesting.
All right, anything else? Anyone? Any motions?
Motion to adjourn?
I second that.